You have different hair colors, things like this. All this is microevolution. It's the change of adaptation, which I agree with. I agree that things change over time based on their environment.
Yeah, and let me interrupt you there, because I think it is important to understand that when the devil attacks God, he attacks God with seeds of truth. That he takes a seed of truth and perverts it. Sin is a perversion of what we're supposed to be. And so evolution is a perversion of the truth, meaning that it has a seed of truth in it. There is no doubt you can look at microevolution and see that these things, things do adapt to their surroundings. In a lot of ways within a species, the strongest do survive. Mm-hmm. That's what continues them on. And so I think it's important to say, yes, there is a seed of truth there, but we have to draw a line somewhere, because a species can change within itself does not mean that a species can change species.
Right. Yeah, and species changing within species, that's where you get into macroevolution. It's the large span. And macroevolution is as much of a belief as Christianity and creationism is. So you can't prove macroevolution. You can prove micro because, again, with humans, their skin color. The darker color of skin, the closer that people are to the equator, because the more melanin their skin needs to protect their body against the rays of the sun. The less melanin you're going to find closer to the poles. People that live north, Norwegians, Ohioans, up north, because we don't need as much melanin, we don't need as much protection against the sun's rays. And so because of that, that's where the microevolution comes into play. Again, macroevolution is a theory. It can't be proved. It is something that is a wide span. Microevolution, it works within the adaptation. Again, going back to the natural selection. If you think of the buffalo, back before Americans or the Europeans came to the U.S., buffalo were everywhere. And because we were the strongest species, we almost wiped out the complete buffalo. And the parks and recreation have been able to save a few and taken them out of the endangered species list, but the strong do survive because the humans came in and almost wiped them all out. And so we, as a stronger species, almost completely wiped them out. So the stronger do survive, and that does happen in several different instances like that.
So as we start moving into this micro versus macro evolution, and we start talking more and more about evolution, it seems that when you start having living creatures, evolution becomes a thing, because we want to connect things together. And so I want to find out, in that evolution versus creation debate, are there some things that as creationists we can point to? Some animals, some creatures, either in the sea or in the air, that we can say, hey, these defy what evolution says.
Yeah, actually, we have. I have a couple videos here. This is from Dr. Joe Martin, who was once an evolutionist, and he is a teacher and a dentist. And he set out to, with his evolutionary theory, and then he was a Christian for a little while. And his students came to him and said, "Dr. Martin, what about creation science?" He didn't know about it. He'd never heard about it. So to kind of play with him a little bit, he said he would look into it with him. And from that, he came up with some examples, because he saw the assumptions that evolutionists made and saw how great they were and how ridiculous they were. And so here are a couple videos. We're going to start out. You always heard the expression, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And this first video we'll talk about from Dr. Martin about the egg. So here we go.
If you take an egg and you put it in warm water, you will see bubbles coming out. Now, why do you see those bubbles? Well, because there's little holes all through the egg shell. About 10,000 actually in a chicken shell. Those holes are there so that the chick can breathe, because that's where he gets his air, through those holes, so they can get the waste out of the shell, because the chick, as he develops, is going to eat the yolk, And the yolk, as he burns it up, there's waste products, there's water and different things given off, and he has to be able to get the waste out of the shell, or for instance, just the amount of water that's given off, he would drown right there in the shell. How do you explain all the intricate mechanisms and the perfect timing that it takes for an egg to develop, making this whole thing happen? Because every step of the way, the chick would be dead. Everything has to be done on a particular day and in a particular order, and the timing has to be exactly right, or you have a dead chick. If you have ever boiled an egg or eaten a hard-boiled egg, you'll notice when you peel the egg, there's like that little membrane in there, and that membrane has to be there. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But on one end of the egg, it's flat, and it looks like the chicken didn't quite fill the egg. Well, that's a special place. That's called the air sac. And so now we take all these parts and we put them together, and we have this little fertilized egg, and now this little chick is developing. By the 5th day, its little heart is pumping. Blood vessels have grown out of the chick. 2 of them go up, hook into the membrane. And those are the ones that it's going to breathe through. It'll get its air through that. The air comes through the pores or the holes in the shell up to the membrane, and then the membrane transfers the oxygen to the artery, the vein that goes into the chick, and then the other vessel that hooks into that gets rid of the waste. And so there's a process there of things coming in and things going out of the shell. 2 more blood vessels hook into the yolk, and that's the way the chick eats. And as he lives in this shell, he begins to get to where he's too big and he can't get enough air, and it's now the 19th day. Now during this time, he has grown a little tooth on top of his beak. It's called the egg tooth. Now most of us grow our teeth inside our mouth, not on our beak, but the little chick has this little egg tooth. And on the 19th day, he takes that and he pokes a little hole into that flat end of the egg where the air is. That's called the air sac. And now he has 6 hours to breathe. Now, if we're swimming and we're on the bottom of the swimming pool and we've run out of air and we get up to the top and I just made it. We usually just sit there and lean there and get some good air and breathe a while. Well, not the chick, because if he got into that air sac, I mean, he's going, I can't get enough air, and he pecks into that on the 19th day, not 1 day sooner or 1 day later or it's dead. It's the 19th day, goes into that sac. Now he's got 6 hours. Now, is he going to just sit there and breathe that air, or is he going to say, I need to do something else with this air, which is what he says. I've got to get a little hole and use this 6 hours of air. I got 6 hours to peck a little hole through the shell. And now he breathes from the 19th to the 21st day through this little hole in the shell. On the 21st day, that's the day he breaks out of the shell. Now, in the meantime, the systems that hook into the membrane and the systems that hook into the yolk, all of those little vessels, they begin to disattach or detach themselves. And when he comes out of the shell, sometimes he might have a blood vessel hanging on him somewhere or something like that. But the fact is, these things, it's like he's dropped his spacesuit off and he is ready to go. And so he comes out of that shell on the 21st day, but every single step along the way had to have perfect timing. It had to be done exactly right. And when he comes out, he's a discrete entity. There's no mistake. This is a chick. All we see in all of nature, in the fossil record and in living creatures, is just discrete, identifiable. We can label them. That's a cow. That's a chicken. And so I think that's more evidence that God made everything, including little chicks, just exactly like they are.
Okay, so as you saw with the chicken and the egg is a finely created thing, and it allows the chicken to be able to grow within it, and it has a certain amount of time for it to break into the air sac, and then from that it has 6 hours, and if it doesn't, again, how do evolutionists explain that the birds do that? I have another video here that talks about a woodpecker and the intricacies of a woodpecker. So here's this video.
The woodpecker is a very special little bird. The beak of a woodpecker is like industrial strength. It is stronger than other birds' beaks. He has special feet. Most birds have 3 toes out the front, 1 toe out the back. Woodpecker has 2 toes out the front, 2 toes out the back, and that's so he can climb around on a tree trunk, a vertical tree trunk, right side up, upside down, sideways. He can crawl any way he wants to. He has special tail feathers. His tail feathers are different than other birds' tail feathers. They're more resilient. They're spongy, and they're very strong and tough. because he tripods himself with his 2 feet and his tail feathers so that he grabs a hold of that tree, fans out his tail feathers, and then bangs his head into the tree. Now, you would think that a woodpecker would go home every night and say to Mrs. Woodpecker, "Oh, I got this headache.